The Crown, Season 6, Part 2, the 5 biggest takeaways from the finale of the show. Are you ready to get into this?
It's going to be a bit of a slog, but let's go for it, Adam.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed, Adam. I don't know about you.
You know, for me, I thought that the Part 1 with Diana really justified itself. I know it was controversial, people didn't like it. Part 2, flat as a pancake.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was really excited for this part. It's Will and Kate, St. Andrews. I thought it would be really fun and exciting, but it was just a little bit boring.
Right, all of the juicy stuff, Will's and Kate and Harry getting drunk at uni, how did it manage to feel so flat?
Yeah, so we really need to talk about the Will-Kate romance. Personally, I found it quite cringe-inducing. They kind of were trying to build this overblown romance, but in the end it was just like a couple exchanges. Yeah, I don't know about you.
They both have this sort of, neither of them are characters you'd write for the screen, or one of them's a character you'd write for the screen, and they'd be paired with someone much more vivacious, much more bubbly. Both Wills and Kate themselves aren't a couple you would naturally write for the screen. And it's this big conversation that The Crown's always having around kind of like fiction versus non-fiction. And, you know, the fact is that the writers have got a real challenge on their hands because neither of them pop in the way that Harry does.
It's true, and I think you're right. The reality is maybe Will and Kate are just a little bit dull. But I would say, you know, then the beauty with The Crown, if you're going to dramatise it, maybe amp them up a bit. And, you know, they have content. The see-through dress stuff is absolutely fodder for a great screen scene, and it just fell a little bit flat.
The see-through dress, I mean, for anyone doesn't know, big tabloid moment, right, in the early noughties when Wills and Kate were at St. Andrews University. Kate, in a fashion show, wore this sort of translucent see-through dress. You could see her underwear. For Waity Katie, it was pretty controversial.
It was pretty fabulous, yeah. And I'm glad that they chose to do that scene and they really went for accuracy. They, you know, replicated her hair, the braids and everything. But yeah, it wasn't like the big fun uni moment that we were maybe hoping for. You
sort of watch all of the Wills and Kate stuff and just, you kind of tune out and you get bored, and it's really weird saying that because this is the most relatable, arguably, for younger audiences. There's a lot of conversations, right, around authenticity of the script on The Crown. And I actually think that some parts of the Wills and Kate, I know that you don't necessarily agree, some parts of the Wills and Kate dialogue does feel authentic. Like when Wills arrives to watch the Queen's 50th year on The Crown at Kate's mum's house, there's this really kind of palpably cringe bit on the pavement where he goes, "Hello, nice to see you." It is cringe, it does feel awkward, but you know, that was them. They are cringe. They are awkward. They were 18.
That may well be true, Adam, but I don't want to watch it. But yeah, I think you're probably right. The other bit that we need to talk about is that, which is definitely fiction, is that they've inserted a meet cute for Will and Kate, which is not at St. Andrews. It's not on the gap year. It's maybe when they're both 16 and Will is selling the big issue with Princess Diana, and Kate and her mum just happen to come out of Harvey Nicks or somewhere, and they go over and buy a big issue, and I just thought that was ridiculous.
There's a few plot devices they've used to try and make Wills and Kate exciting, and they've failed. One of which being this idea that Kate went to buy a big issue. The other one being this idea that Wills was sort of so hung up on Kate at uni that there's this weird murky line where he says, look, you know, if I can't be with Kate, I don't know if I want to exist, is it?
Yeah, this was a line
I don't know if I want to live.
That Adam and I both wrote down immediately. After a few light flirty exchanges, Will is suddenly confessing his love and says he can't live on if Kate isn't his girlfriend, which felt a bit affected.
It does, and I think, again, it's another example of them trying to shoehorn in a bit more drama into a plot that actually feels quite anodyne and safe. And, you know, let's also talk about the fact that, you know, there is a, for me, it felt, I don't know how you felt, there was a sort of, my mind kind of went to the idea that Will might take his own life. I mean, we don't know what they meant by this line about not wanting to live, but my mind did drift in part to, you know, suicide, and I know that isn't what probably the writers meant, but you've got to be careful when presenting young teenage men saying angsty lines like that could be perceived or read in certain ways, especially amid you know, this huge rising sort of culture of suicides in the UK and the conversations that Meghan has had about her own mental health.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think I read it as, just like overblown, whatever, this boy thinking he's the first person to ever meet love. You're right, they do know the conversation going on. The Meghan stuff's been going on as they're producing it, and it seems a bit of a throwaway line to just put in without much thought.
It's also a bad line, regardless
It is also a bad
of
line.
any mental health implications, to sort of go, I don't know if I want to live anymore. If Kate, I mean, they'd met twice. There's levels of being a drip, right? And I don't think he's like, it's this idea that he was that bound to her. It throws back to a part in season 6, part 1, where Mohammed Al Fayed sort of really lays the pressure onto Dodi to propose to Diana, and sort of, I can't remember the exact line, but basically implies like your guts are going to be for garters if you don't propose now. They'd been on about 4 dates. She'd been on his yacht and had some champers. Come on, this is getting a bit silly.
Yeah, I think with Will as well, I just don't buy it. You're the prince at university. You don't really. I think you're going to be a bit of a better flirt than that, to be honest.
It had years. I mean, that royal privilege has got to taught you to chirp.
It's got to do something. Come on. Yeah, I guess the other major character we might want to talk about is Harry, who I think really was maybe one of the saving parts of this part of season 6.
Yeah, look, we get what we've all been waiting for, which is Harry in the Nazi outfit. Huge tabloid moment. Are they going to show it? Are they not going to show it? We do. So look, the last episode is bad. The last episode doesn't. We'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah.
The last episode's a crushing disappointment, but we do get a very joyous, hedonistic 5 or 6 minutes of Harry out on the sesh with Wills, wearing this very controversial Nazi outfit, which was historically accurate. He did wear this outfit, and a scene where they're on the roof of a palace. Playing this, very problematic game of colonials and natives.
Yeah, well, that was the theme for the party, yeah. And what's interesting with this also is we see it be maybe potentially a little bit informed by Harry's book, in which he said that Kate and Wills encouraged him to wear the Nazi outfit, and they gesture towards that a little bit, which is interesting. Harry is portrayed sympathetically, I would say.
And Luther Ford is an incredible. I get the sense, really young, upcoming actor. I get the sense he's a really brilliant actor. He's got real depth and edge to his sort of performance. He gets Prince Harry's vibe, and he's the way more watchable out of the 3. Obviously, Harry writes himself, doesn't he? He's a better character for fiction.
Yeah.
Whether or not this is fiction, we could talk about for weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that scene was sort of the one saving grace from the final episode. And Prince Harry has that moment where you really do get the teeth of Prince Harry. You get the anger.
Okay, so another thing we want to talk about, Adam, is the decision to bring the events up to where they did. So they brought them up to around 2005. Obviously, we have the Will and Kate stuff. There's a lot of discussion about should they have brought it so close to the modern day? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it ends up feeling arbitrary is the most I can say, really. I don't have a clear answer on where they could have brought it up to. We needed to include the Diana death for all sorts of historical reasons. It's one of the most monumental things I've lived through. But the feeling now that they had to end it with Charles and Camilla's wedding, it's like, huh?
I know. Yeah, I think also, the period they're covering, it's been so covered in the tabloids. Everyone who's watching it can, we all saw it happen anyway. So there's not enough intrigue to be, why are we watching this? We all know what happens. We all know every detail of what happens. And I think both of us agreed that actually where this shines is when there are moments where it flashbacks to the young queen. And those were high glamour, really fun, really entertaining. Yeah,
let's give a quick shout out to Viola Pretijon, the cover star, by the way, of City EM's magazine. Whoop. Returning and downloadable and readable on our website and in print soon as well.
A fabulous interview from Adam.
Thank you so much. Yeah, she was great to speak to, and we were lucky to get the exclusive on the first interview with the 4th queen and the final queen from The Crown, who plays a teenage queen in a flashback episode. Really good fun, right?
It's such good fun, yeah. And that's it's VE Day, it's the end of the war, it's really glamorous, and to be honest, it actually does the rest of the series a little bit of a disservice, because really we just all want to get back to this old glamorous stuff.
It's sort of the Venn diagram, isn't it, of kind of like bit of history, bit of intrigue, bit of entertainment, shove it all in the pot, stir it around. You've got that Crown formula of kind of like history, modernity, should they still exist? And nowadays, we're now with the sort of modern royals, it's like you've lost, the word you keep using is intrigue, and I think you smashed it with that. You've lost the intrigue.
There's really no plot. We all know what happens. There's really a little compelling reason to watch it. Whereas I think a lot of people watched the first series because they didn't know the history. It was really interesting for them. And as you say, that formula is really what made The Crown such a strong show for the first 4 seasons or so. And now it seems like they're really trying to push it too far.
Yeah, from season 4 onwards, it started to go downhill, which brings us to the point of discussing. Let's talk about the ending. Bumper episode. I think it comes in at just under 80 minutes.
Yeah.
It's nice to have an indulgent feature piece to end 6 seasons. It's lovely to have an extra long piece. I sort of bedded in, got comfy, and then, oh dear, it all went a little bit pear-shaped.
Dear. The ending was extremely twee. It ends with Charles and Camilla's wedding. It's not like a blockbuster moment for me, I gotta be honest.
No, like Charles himself has never been a blockbuster moment. There's always been, yeah, he's going to be king one day, right? But there's little about him that, again, feels exciting to watch. And the wedding, the more interesting parts of it, there are some interesting parts. This idea that the Queen, was potentially thinking of abdicating.
Yeah, which I think is not true. Was definitely some artistic license there. And it's done a little bit pantomime-y where the Queen's going to give a speech and then she skips half her cue cards and wraps it all up. And Charles is crestfallen that he's not going to be king. And it's all a little bit much.
And the ending as well. I mean,
the ending.
They're both sort of, it's so on the nose. I think spoilers here, everyone kind of knows what happens. So, you got the finale there really is the last couple of minutes, the Queen and Prince Philip stamping on their own graves in Westminster Abbey.
Yeah, it's on the nose.
It's on the nose. It's overly saccharine, it's so sweet, and it's really sentimental, which is the one thing, they've always insisted this is a fictional show, and being overly sentimental is kind of the one thing you don't want to do. Yeah,
and I mean, it's no secret, the makers of the show are royalist. This was clearly very informed by the Queen's death. They clearly wanted a touching tribute, and maybe that moment, I mean, we had a moment of quite a lot of sentimentality, maybe a year on, we're a bit over it.
Quite. It's exactly, that absolutely nails it. I think it's clearly such a product of its period. People were grieving, rightly so. It was, if you were a royalist or anyone that was close to the royals, which a lot of these show creators we know have royal connections. We understand now why you would feel sad and why you would grieve, and we know that the mood on the set was solemn in the days after she died. But unfortunately, they lost their creative genius in that last episode. Well, in the last season, really. But the last few minutes of her kind of walking off through where she's about to be buried, it's just it's boring. It's wildly underwhelming.
Yeah.
And I couldn't actually believe that was how it finished.
Yeah, it was as if maybe like a GCSE project. If you were like, how would we write the end of a big show? This is what you would write.
I can't top that.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It's a shame. Okay, we may as well do it. Let's give a star rating out of 5.
Ooh.
The Crown Season 6 Part 2.
I'll give it a 2.
I'm going to give it a 2. And that's actually
a little generous.
A little bit generous.
Yeah.